Hi, I'm Ron Tester. I'm a business coach, and I'm here with Susan Pullen.
Hi.
Hi. Just briefly, we wanted to talk about something that comes up a fair amount, at least it does for me and my coaching clients or people that are considering coaching, and that is, should I even be doing this? Right? Because a lot of times people come to me because they're struggling. They wonder if it really makes sense to continue or not, and so we just wanted to address that. Should I even have a business? So, Susan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was really intrigued, Ron, when you said in our recent conversation that sometimes you coach people or you mentor people in the direction of maybe you shouldn't have a business doing this. And I think that just pricked up my curiosity, and I think it will for other people too. So I would love to hear, when do you think it's probably not a good idea for someone to have their own business
Mm.
doing coaching or healing?
Yeah. So it's great. And I for sure don't want to seem like the destroyer of dreams. That is not my intent. So I've been coaching small business owners for 10 years and that is just lovely. And one of the things that happens is sometimes people will say, I've got a friend that's thinking about starting a business and would you be open to talking to them or whatever? And um a lot of times the conversation goes like this. I am so good at baking muffins. I'm like the best muffin baker in our town. And I really think that, I could create a business that does this. This is actually a true example, but I won't say the person's name. And I said, what are your ideas? And so what they wanted to do was to get a store front at a local place and um, bake muffins, and that was their plan. And this person was not a professional baker, and I'm sure their muffins were delicious, but um, the the life that they had. Uh, was not one in which a fair amount of risk would make sense for them. And we talked about it, right? I mean, because I'm not immediately like don't open up a bakery or whatever. I mean, I, but for this person, um, they needed a steady source of income, right? So it was going to be super hard because they couldn't quit their job, so they were going to have to figure out how to start a business on the side, which is fine, but some businesses lend themselves to being done on the side more than others, right? So if you don't have to be open in the mornings to serve muffins and coffee, that's helpful, right? If you have a full-time job where you're supposed to be somewhere from 9 to 5. um, they didn't really have a plan, and they didn't really have a passion for it. What they thought was, oh, seems like a good way that I could make some relatively easy money, right? Because I could rent this place and it's only a couple $1,000s a month, and if I sell my muffins for $5 a piece, I'd have, and on and on. And with just a cursory kind of look at the investments associated with them, you say, well, it probably doesn't make sense right now without going into more depth about, how you're going to make this happen, right? Because if you can't be there, somebody's got to be there. You've got to pay them. On and on, and over it goes. And I'll be honest with you, I have friends that have gone off in that direction and have invested a lot of money and frankly lost a lot of money doing things like that require big upfront capital expenditures, etc. And it's fine to do. There's a place for that, but in the end you have to really take account of the risk involved, if it makes sense, not just period, but it doesn't make sense for you in your life. There might be somebody that could come along with the resources, the time, the money, the expertise to really make a go of, a bakery shop. I think about all the different places in New York City that I go, that are amazing, muffins and coffee and all that sort, and they make a go of it, even in a high rent place like New York City, high labor costs and everything, because they've got it figured out and they had the resources to make it happen, right? When it comes to coaching and or healing practice, the barrier to entry is much lower, right? You can start on your own. You don't have to make a huge capital investment. You don't have to buy equipment. You don't have to rent an office or storefront. And that's good, right? But there's still some times when we say, okay, does this make sense in your life right now? Right? Because some people feel like I want to do this. I don't like to charge people. And I just don't want to, I want to be able to just help my friends and help people that need it. And so can't I just, do that? And for those people, I say, absolutely. If you want to serve that way, it's not a sustainable business. So you're not going to make a living off of it, but I think it's fine just to serve the people that you are wanting to serve, right? And so for some people, because they have strong reticence to charging, and they may be comfortable doing something else, and they're like, well, I don't, I'm fine doing my job. I just want to do this a little bit on the side. For those people, I would say, great, do it on the side. Don't start a business doing it, right? Now, if somebody says, I feel called to do this and to create a business that does this, then that's a whole different conversation that we can get into. Um, I think that in this world, there are so many opportunities, right? I heard somebody once say, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but that just because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity doesn't mean you should take it,
Mm.
right? So this may be a once in a lifetime opportunity. Okay, is it the right opportunity for you? Right. And I think that there's a lot of soul searching that needs to be done, especially in the coaching and healing professions, because it is hard. And it is, if you don't have that calling, if you're just looking for a little side hustle where you can make a little bit of money here or there, that's probably not the thing to do. Maybe open up an Etsy store or something like that, because it's hard, right? I mean, any kind of work like this is hard. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, but if you're not really committed, if you don't feel like this is what I'm meant to do, then maybe explore that a little further before you go on. The nice thing is that you don't have to decide today, right? If you feel like maybe, I love being a coach, maybe I'd like to do it as a business, maybe I'd like to do it as a hobby. I'd say try it out. It's not that hard to just say, I'm happy to coach you. I charge X amount and blah, blah, blah. And then, you get that feeling, okay, this is working, or yeesh, this isn't working.
So, Ron, it sounds like a lot of what you are listening for when you're talking to someone who's trying to decide whether to go forward with a business or not is you're listening to their motivation. And is the motivation, this seems like an easy way that I can kind of make a buck? Or is the motivation, this is something that really feels deeply important and potentially satisfying and purposeful to me?
Yeah, absolutely. And specifically in the areas where that matters, right? I mean, there was a time in Texas where I used to live when vaping was a thing, right? And pretty much anybody could open up a vaping store and make a lot of money. Why didn't I do that? Well, I didn't. I have issues, but but beyond that, but honestly, I mean, it was an economic opportunity that was there, right? It was an of the moment sort of thing, but I didn't feel called to do that. And the reality is that, if opening a business is hard, right? So the payoff had better be worth it, either in terms of personal satisfaction or financial gain or impact or whatever impact or payoff means to you. It doesn't have to be money, right? But the payoff better be substantial because the work is hard, and it's always easy at the beginning. It's always, oh, I'm newly certified and I'm happy to go out and I'm going to go, do the thing, right? But then you have to go out and do the thing. And then all those mental blocks come up and they, gosh, it'd be nice to just to watch Netflix instead of, writing a blog post or posting on social or creating a marketing plan or delivering. Some people like to go out into the world and then they get hired and then it's like, oh, that guy, to have to talk to him again, because it's not their thing. So I do think that it's super important to consider your motivation and consider what is the long-term benefit to you. I say payoff, but is it personal satisfaction? Is it impact? Is it money? Is that worth it? Because there's always going to be a cost, and the costs are unknown. When you're facing that, when you've got a high rent bill or high payroll or whatever it is, do you have the motivation inside to keep going when it's hard, when it hurts? Because it is sometimes hard. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. And so in my experience, even doing something very purposeful and meaningful and something that I love, I'm still going to come to those places that challenge me.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And that's the reality, of life. And I will say that, sometimes it's well worth it, right? I mean, because even if you work in corporate or whatever, there are challenges there, so you have to kind of pick the challenges that you want. But in a corporate setting, sometimes you can just kind of step away from that work, and sometimes you don't have to own it in a way that you do. When you are a coach or healer or small business owner, period, you don't turn it off at 5 o'clock at night and go home, right? You don't. I mean, you can certainly set boundaries. You can say, this is my time. I'm not saying that you have to be working in it 24/7, but the reality is that it's always with you, right? And so you could be at a ball game on a Saturday night, and this idea about I wonder if my messaging is right for my new campaign or whatever, right? I mean, you have those things that they're just a reality. So it's good to be aware of that, and that's part of counting the cost. Should you do it? If you feel called to, then yes, you should, but just be aware that that is a thing.
Yeah, that it does take some effort uh, at some junctures, right? That we do have some investment in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I will say, from my perspective, the earlier you are in this process, if you are starting a business, um, I guess this is the counter argument, is it's probably as hard as it's going to be. Right. If you are early in the business, and you haven't got your systems in place, you're still working on figuring out who you're talking to, what you're telling them, and all that sort of thing. You're setting the foundation, and it is hard, and it's probably as hard as it's ever going to be, because eventually you'll have that foundation, you'll have the assets. You won't have to be tinkering with your website every day, and you won't be wondering, gosh, what do I say? Because you'll know who your clients are, what their concerns are, how you want to meet those needs, et cetera. And once that foundational work is done, it does get easier, right? But you do have to get through it. Nobody skips the stages in their business, right? You don't go from, yeah, I think I'll start a business, to, oh, I've got one established. And
Mm.
honestly, if anyone tells you, and I see this unfortunately in advertisements on social, if anyone tells you, it's a coaching business in a box, and you can just
Mm.
pay, whatever, and now you don't have to, you don't. That's not true. Even if they give you great information and stuff, there's the personal work, which no one escapes. You still have to do the work.
Boy, that's true.
Yeah.
That's, that's my experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't want to sound like a downer. I don't want to be the destroyer of dreams. I'm all for people fulfilling, their calling and doing what they want. But if there's a question and if there's uncertainty, then it's okay to take a step back and say, is this really for me? Or to try it out. Do a small scale test. Say, I'm going to take on 5 paying clients and see what happens. Oh, I like this, I don't like that. And then make a decision, right?
Yeah. I like that. Kind of take the pressure off.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I think, gosh, there's, as soon as you call something a business, there's this whole world of pressure, which there is some pressure, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming, right? You just, no, I'm just testing it out, just, and I wouldn't do it flippantly. I would do it like I'm serious about this. If I'm going to take on 5 paying clients, I'm going to provide excellent service. I'm going to do all the things, right? I'm not going to, do it half-heartedly. But then, once I've done those 5, then I'm going to decide, does this make sense to continue? Do I want to do another 5, or do I want us to just pull back or whatever?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what do you think is helpful, Ron, when people are in that place of, tentative, I think I might want to, but I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't
Mm.
know if it's right for me. Is it too risky?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. I what I would recommend for people is first that they go inside and see if this is really something that they want to do, or if it's just something that just kind of sounds good, right? Oh, I read this blog post about how good it is to be a Reiki healer, so I'm going to try it. That sort of thing. Or do you feel like this is a calling, right? If you're in that place and you're not sure, what I would do is I would talk to somebody who has been successful in the thing that you want to do, or something like what you want to do, right? So if I want to be, a life coach, I'm not going to talk to a guy who started a plumbing business, because I'm sure they've got wisdom, but it's not close enough to what I want to do, where there's a lot of carryover, right? Because if I can talk to somebody, let's say I want to be a life coach who has built a successful life coach practice, then I can get insight, wisdom from them, and talk about what was it like at the beginning? What do you wish that you had known? What do you wish that somebody had told you, et cetera? And you can kind of assess, oh, this sounds like something that I want to do, or something that I don't want to do. The other thing, and you mentioned it recently, is that you don't want to ask people that have known you for all your life, and they're like they're like, life coaching, I remember when you were in the high school band or whatever, because people tend to pigeonhole us. They do. I mean, in my former life, I was a physical therapist, and so a lot of people still think of me as a physical therapist, and when I say I'm a business coach, they're like, well, okay, I guess that makes sense, but just like, do you still like work on knees? It's it's a thing, right? So you have to go with people who are open to who you are today. I literally had a conversation earlier today with somebody. I'm like, okay, that was the past, and this is today.
Mm.
And it's good to be aware that, we grow, we evolve, we change. And so when you have that fresh perspective, you can talk to somebody who has been successful in something like what you want to do, and they're much more likely to say, yeah, it seems like this, or oosh, right now it's not a good time, because of XYZ. And not that they should make your decision for you, but I think seeking counsel. So the short answer is, if it were me, I would go within. Is this really a calling? Is this something that I want to do? Like, more than just a passing fancy. Is this something I want to do? And then I would find somebody who had done it successfully, right? The world is full of people who have not done things successfully. And if you say, if you go on the internet and say, I'm thinking about being a life coach, what do y'all think? God only knows what they're going to say, right? I would not trust them at all. And even people that love you, right? They want to do good for you. They want to support you. And the way they're going to support you is by keeping you safe.
Right,
Well, then the way that you're going to be safe is by continuing to work at IBM as you have for the last 20 years,
right.
period, right? And that's, it's born out of love. But still, it's not necessarily the most helpful thing right then. So that's what I'd say.
Thanks so much for the conversation, Ron. I think that feels like a good, unless there's anything else you want to add.
Um, Actually, there is one thing, and it's a quote by a guy named Howard Thurman. Um, again, Google this to make sure. But it's something like, do not ask what the world needs, but ask what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come fully alive. And I would say, if what you want to do makes you come fully alive, then go do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there will be the people who are waiting for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Ron.
All right. Thanks, Susan.